Hi everybody, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery and my wormery has sort of spilled over to this side of the room. Continuing on, I gotta make some order over there and consolidate. But I was gonna check in on actually another set of bins today, but when I came down here earlier, I picked up the cocoon nursery to take a peek down into the actual worm bins. And let me bring it over. The camera will show you what I saw. This weird white growth within tub number 1. So I numbered these things. They got the same start date, the same types of worms in them. And the one that I numbered number 1 has this unusual, I don't know what the heck it is. It almost seems like some sort of a fungus or a mold or something. So I don't want to panic. My hope is I could simply wipe that off carefully in such a way that I don't spill more of it into the material below, and my hope is we could just get on with business as usual, feeding these bins. But above all, I want to tend to cleaning this up first. Let me put on a glove and we'll get this system up onto the bench. I don't know what to make of this stuff. It looks unlike anything I'm familiar with or anything I've seen in my worm bins, and I don't know, it has this unusual appearance. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when you're toasting marshmallows over an open fire, and if you don't burn it, you get it just right, the right toasted color to it. You know what I mean? Parts of this stuff looks like a nicely toasted marshmallow, but I'm really a little bit worried. I'm worried about dislodging it and having it fall down into the bin. So I'm thinking it would be really nice to somehow protect the system from getting this stuff dropped down into it. So my idea was to just leave this plastic covering right here where it is and attempt to mask off the material that the system is made up out of by sort of taping off the hole where stuff could drop down. And it seems like an imperfect solution, but better than nothing. There we go. So now I feel a little bit safer removing this stuff. Not even knowing how it's going to react. I guess the stuff here I could do a little test drive with. It's definitely crumbly, and it's got like a brownish color to it, really. Just the outer portion of it has this white appearance. I'm not going to mess with this stuff a lot either. I don't want to have this stuff get airborne. Who knows what's going on here. So let me see what I could do about maybe even dampening this down with a little squirt of water and then just wiping it off. I want this stuff out of here. Alright, I have here one of these paint stirring sticks. I'm going to see about seeing if I can just scrape this stuff off in one chunk right down onto the plastic so I can just extract it. Hopefully all of it staying on the plastic, not falling down into the container, because who knows what this stuff is. So weird. I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there that know exactly what this is, and I'm probably doing completely the wrong thing here, messing with it as much as I am. I got another hunk of it over here I'd like to scrape off also. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and wipe the entire side down with, I'm even thinking maybe a little alcohol on a piece of paper towel, something that, I don't know, maybe it will help wipe out whatever that stuff is, because it's clearly alive and growing there. And it's weird, in some places it looks like it's almost like drizzling down off the sides of the container. It makes me wonder if it came from the outside or if it's something that creeped out of the container, up out of the bin somehow. Maybe something associated to something I fed. Alright, so yeah, I bought this down here. It'll be my glove to feed with once we're done here. This glove will go in the trash. Hopefully I didn't contaminate the glove that I plan to use to feed our worms with. I think this plastic should remain here as a drop cloth up until I've had a chance to really wipe this down, and then we could then we can extract this plastic with all this stuff, whatever the heck it is. Oh darn, I forgot to moisten this stuff before messing with it. Alright, let's try that now. Better late than never. Ugh. If I can just get this stuff off here. At least it's wet now and it doesn't feel like it's floating around in the air around me. It feels like I've kind of contained it. And I'm going to have to head over to the sink because I'm clearly using both of my hands at this point. I just figured if there was a clear, obvious point where I have to just like touch the stuff outright, I would use the glove for that. Oops. No. There's a little bit over here too. It almost seems like it would have started growing intensely like we saw in the other places. Here it looked like it was just sort of creeping up the wall almost. Or, who knows, I could have it all wrong. It could be coming from the outside. It could have been creeping down into the bin. So let's see if I can find a piece of this napkin that's still a little bit clean. Try to get this job done. Ugh, this is really gross. I don't know what this stuff is. I just can't wait to get it the heck out of here. Oh, I had to go grab a piece of paper towel. Felt like that napkin we were using was pretty much at its end. And I sure hope this paper towel will give me that little extra bit of abrasion and toughness to really let me get this job done, get this stuff the heck out of here. Here I am using my fingers to handle this. Who knows what this stuff is. I'm probably taking years off my life by messing with this stuff, whatever the heck it is. So if anyone knows what it is, please don't try to spare me my feelings or spare me worry. Let me know what I'm dealing with here. By all means, I'd really like to know. Alright, I think we got the majority of it off at this point. I'm thinking one more squirt and wipe would be nice. And I know that it's something that we're never going to be able to get off entirely, especially once we get down below where the plastic and the tape are. So if the stuff is still thriving down within the bin, it probably still has the potential to come creeping out again. So we'll be watching this closely to see what occurs. But at this point, I think it's time to carefully get this mess out of here and try to get back to normal with tending to this bin's needs. Ay, ay, ay. No, let's not use this either. I'm going to walk this stuff straight outside. Before I slip on the nice sterile blue glove and resume work in this nice newly sterilized fresh environment with nothing to worry about, let's put on this sterile glove. I know I'm going to hear all about this, all kinds of weird stuff. I'm not even going to be surprised at some of the stuff that I hear. But I am very curious if anyone does definitively know what that is. I'm sure we're going to get a whole bunch of people just taking pot shots and guesses at it too, but maybe we'll get to the bottom of my little mysterious, I don't know, it felt like I was like in one of these horror movies like The Blob, right? Or The Thing or whatever. It's weird. Weird, creepy, The Fog, right? It's like these weird natural anomalies that they try to scare you with. It's not even a monster, it's just some sort of a weird growth. It probably is a monster of some sort, right? The Blob. thing. Yeah, that thing just like takes the shape of whatever host it's occupying or whatever, right? Alright, so I mean, I don't smell anything weird. I'm just trying to like play in some more observations here. I'm also feeling like I should just do what I can to at least where I saw that weird stuff growing, try to distance myself from the wall for a while, since it seems like we're still early enough in the life cycle of this bin that we're not loaded up with material in here yet. We've got room to do unusual things like this. It is nice. I think in the last video too, when the system was 40 days of age, we were already noticing how just the color of the material was really changing to a mostly dark brown color versus being, you know, the color of the bedding type materials that make the system up. Alright, so I guess this top covering we'll be able to restore, and since I've got a couple coffees in here, one of the new coffee filters could be used to mark where we fed. So we can actually recycle this pretty worn one into the feeding area too as bedding. And, well, I guess the feeding zone indicator being here was showing us where we last fed, right down the middle over there. And I know some of this stuff was fast food, if you will. I forget exactly what it was, but I remember the slow food was, I think, pieces of corn cob. Oh yeah, there was this big sheet of cardboard too that we laid in. It was top covering for our cocoon nursery. And, you know, trying to decide what to do with that cocoon nursery. We baited it, trying to get the babies out of their last check-in 9 days ago. I'm sure that after 9 days, we probably got some accumulated baby worms in our collection tray. And, you know, if you look at some of the stuff that they're getting, all this cucumber peel, those tomato bits, that coffee, most of that stuff's going to go pretty quick. The corn cob on the other way, just like these corn cob discs, they're everywhere. See them all? They're going to take a while. And here's another piece of corn cob. Well, it's summer, you know. Not surprising to see corn cob in my systems. And maybe I'll reserve use of it and not put it into my older systems where I might be looking to harvest soon. These newer ones like this one, 7 weeks of age today, 49 days of age. So yeah, it was at day 40 that we came in here last, and after only 9 days we're back. I didn't really intend to work on this bin today. I intended to feed a couple other systems, but when I saw that unusual growth, I figured, why don't we shuffle the schedule and get in here and see what's going on. We've got a lot of leftover. There was this large sheet of cardboard we threw in. That's showing up as leftover bedding. I had somehow crumbled this toilet paper tube cardboard up here as well. I think in the other system we had torn them open. Here they were just placed in as tubes. So there is the middle section of it. Oh, I tore it. It's unwinding. I was just curious to see if there was any worms in there. And, well, like we said earlier, this top covering piece of newspaper still seems to be in pretty decent shape, so we'll preserve it to maintain that function. But like other things, like this other toilet paper tube, this old feeding zone indicator, even some of this top dressing leafy matter that we put in here last time as a top covering would make really nice bedding for this feeding. I'm just pushing it all around to make myself room to get all the leftovers back in. There are all those old corn bits that we surfaced while examining the leftovers. And yeah, even though there's leftovers, these are the types of leftovers that I did expect to see leftovers of, and they'll be in here for a while. So we'll just continue to feed around that stuff with faster composting foods, and that slower material will just continue to break down over time. In fact, we'll even give them some more of that slow composting material with yet another half of a corn cob to go in there alongside the other ones. So I think the round little cut up discs went in 2 feedings ago, and then the large chunk that we saw in there went in last time, and now this large chunk's going in this time. So we'll have opportunities to see the gradual decay of corn cob over time in these systems. And did we get everything? Half of everything? We'll leave the rest for bin number 2. Here, I think before we throw the coffee on, why don't we add a little bit of bedding. I'm going to come in here with a piece of newspaper. Let's throw that in here, and I've also got my prepared bedding. I want to get some of that in here too. There we go. It's a nice big generous handful. And on top of that, I've got even more bedding in the form of leaves, but that's going to go again, kind of like what you saw here, all this top covering, all this top covering leafy material that we ended up throwing down into the feeding area. We're just going to put a whole bunch more of that across the top as a nice top covering. And this will be our new feeding zone indicator. I just tore a hole into the side of it. Oops. And let's just see if we can help this coffee blend in a little bit with the bedding beneath it. You know what else we could do to dress up this feeding? We'll drop in a little bit of my worm chow as well. That should make things really cozy for these wormies. So, feeding zone indicator, top covering, let's get those in place. But first, the finishing touch of the leaves. Let's level things off to a certain point before we do that. Alright, looks good. Here we go. Yep, let's see if that's enough to give it that sort of camouflaged, natural looking top surface. Not bad, not bad. Doesn't need to be a thick layer. I think the worms will appreciate that just the way it is. And to help us find our way back to the spot where we fed last, we put down the coffee filter to indicate the last feeding area. And I guess just to preserve that original idea of maybe keeping our distance from whatever that was, or at least, you know, making the assumption that it might just come back, so it is better to steer clear of this particular space in the bin. We'll try to back off those 2 sections and see if that maybe helps us prevent having this stuff create some sort of a weird, crazy fungal outbreak in my worm bin here. And I think I will position this bin a little bit distant from my other systems. So I'm going to cover with this now as well. Let things dry a little bit rather than putting the bubble wrap back on. And who knows, maybe we'll do the same for the other bin, because we're starting to see a lot of castings pile up here for a 49-day-old system, 7 weeks of age. It's really nice to see such a large amount of the material in here already converted to castings. All right, let's get bin number 2. You know what? Let's hang on with bin number 2. Let's get the cocoon nursery out here. All right, so here, all we did 7 weeks ago when we moved all the wormies out of their old home and into these 2 new systems that we're feeding here. They're not even that new anymore at 7 weeks age. Their castings were held onto in this shallow tray to let them air out a little bit, I suppose. Maybe they were nice and damp still, but the assumption was that it was still damp enough to support ongoing development and hatching and birth of the babies coming out of the cocoons that were left behind by the worms. And I believe we've already probably left more than twice as much time that would have been needed for all the cocoons in this material to hatch. And as the stuff was also at the same time left to dry, we figured we were creating an environment borderline hostile to worm occupation. And since we knew that would cause the worms to try to find themselves something a little bit more hospitable, we wanted to make sure we created a little oasis in the middle there for the worms to gather in if they wanted to get a little bit of relief from the dry material that they were inhabiting. So I've not seen one single worm in the material that I just up-tilled. And I know sometimes you'll only see them moving a little bit after you've disturbed them and let them sit there for a second. But I don't know, maybe we'll see something in the video afterwards, but I don't know, it felt pretty dry to me too, so I'm starting to think that we're probably at the end of the game here. This is probably a depopulated batch of castings. So let's get this thing out of here, try to catch any wormies that might just still be underneath this container. Make sure they're not excluded from the fun. Oop. There's a little guy that we don't want to have excluded from the fun. Come on, buddy. Join the crowd over here. Now, I thought I saw some other, yep. I'm sure we're going to see a few, and I see some of them are pretty small too. So let's get our environment up here that we could drop our little buddies into as we fish them out. Wondering about this one by one fishing them out thing, you know. I'm wondering if I should just scoop a bunch of this castings material up and out of here. As nice as it would be to have it as part of the harvested castings, I'd prefer to know that we've got all the wormies, didn't leave any behind in this relatively harsh, dry stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to grab this stuff over here and include it with the contents of the bait station. And I think we will have retrieved all of the inhabitants of this material. Let's see what else we could see. At this point, I guess I'll just see how many more I could just visually observe and pluck out of here individually. But my guess is we've probably got the majority of them. If not all of them, hopefully all of them. And you know, there's probably no reason to let this stuff further dry. It would be probably a good idea to almost even dampen it a little bit just for better shelf life before putting it away. And then any worms that are stuck in it still will have the moisture they need just to continue on, even though they missed the train with the rest of the gang. Sometimes I'll even put a little piece of melon or something in there just to give them another little final spot to gravitate towards and maybe fish them out later. So let's tend to those sort of loose ends later. Let's set this aside briefly, and then we can get bin number 2 out here, which I guess will be the beneficiary of receiving these transplanted wormies here. Because the other system, if there is something going awry there, I'd rather not add a bunch of worms to it if those that live in there now are already, you know, doomed because of the harsh growth of whatever blob thing that's growing in there. I really don't know what to expect. And I sure hope I did a good enough job cleaning off my glove before coming into here and, you know, preventing the transfer of that stuff from one system to the other. But yeah, let's get the other bin fed and we'll be done. All right. All right, so now just a quick mention of the worm count in these systems. What we did was the system that all these worms, this bin as well as the other bin, the old system that we migrated the worms out of, we estimated the total number of worms being relocated, and then we split that number in half. So up until today, the assumption was that both systems had an equal number of worms, somewhere around 2,500 worms, something like 2,490 something, very close to 2,500. And at this point, I guess we're going to be skewing that equal population figure, because whatever worms show up in that transport container from the nursery, I'll add only to the population count of this system. Oops. And that'll, I guess, put this bin a little bit in the lead in terms of, I guess, not only from the head count perspective or the worm count perspective, but also from the perspective that it's never had to contend with having some sort of a weird foreign growth appearing on it and any sort of handicap that that situation might bring with it. Hopefully it doesn't bring with it any sort of a handicap situation. Hopefully that's the end of it, us cleaning it off and doing away with it. Hopefully we won't see any more of that, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I will be watching closely. And I'm going to try to make a decision here on whether we're keeping the plastic covering, the bubble wrap here, or switching out with paper here too. I like the idea of maintaining consistency between the systems as much as possible. After all, they've got the same birthday and they came from the same source. So looking interesting down in here. So I definitely like the idea of maintaining consistency, and you know, as you can see, kind of to be expected, we're going to see discs of the corn as well as the most recently added chunk of corn from the last feeding. And then today they're going to get that other chunk. And you saw the top covering as well as I thought I had separated the feeding zone indicator from the rest. That'll all be bedding. We'll just use the filter that comes in with today's portion of coffee as their replacement feeding zone indicator. Alright, let's just do a quick unearthing of the previous feeding area just to get a sense of how we're doing as far as castings creation, castings density in here. Whether we have that sense that the material in the system is capable of hanging on to its own moisture without help, or would the system benefit from continuing to have the plastic covering at least for a little while. Good numbers of castings intermingled with lots of the bedding that we've got down here. This thing is almost complete. I guess there was a fold here or something. Someplace it fell off. Wherever it fell off, it was heavily worn already. But it does almost seem like that piece of cardboard's holding up a little bit better. This piece of corn almost feels like it's holding up better. I don't know why. I guess it feels like maybe that other system's perhaps a little bit quicker on the breakdown processes. Breaking down what it gets. Nah, I shouldn't really think that. I'd rather think of ways that they're similar, The only thing that'll be different is the fact that we're going to add some worms to this system at the end, and I guess to get to that point we've got to take care of the feeding first, so let's get that done, then we can proceed to releasing the wormies. What are we going to do? We're going to throw in a handful of my prepared bedding. A lot of this recycled material can go back down into the bottom. Possibly some of the best bedding we could have. Very nice. Even this seasoned leafy matter. It's been in here for the past 9 days. That stuff will really go well too. We'll just replace the top covering of leafy matter sprinkles with a fresh coating. Alrighty. Now, let's see. Doesn't have to be a great deal of fanfare here, right? But I think we also included some paper last time. Extra paper in addition to the shredded paper. Just a sheet of newspaper in there as well. Maybe just sort of keeping to that theme of how we had that piece of cardboard sheet in there. Now we've got a newspaper sheet. And somehow I remember the coffee going hand in hand with a little bit of shredded paper material, so I think we'll probably need just a little bit more of that in here. Was that the old coffee filter? A piece of it was still stuck to the top covering, I guess. Yeah, let's really quickly give this system a nice little top covering of just a little bit more of this, so we have some place to drop the coffee and the worm chow. And I wondered about the moisture level, whether it's sufficient already on its own to be left uncovered, or at least not covered with plastic any longer. I don't know why. I'm just getting this feeling like I'd rather just protect the system a little while longer. We're going to put the plastic back on at the end. That's my gut feeling, that that's the way to go here today. I'm always curious to hear if people agree with that assessment and plan of action. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to get that feedback in real time, so I'll be doing what I'm doing. Hopefully not to the regret of my viewers. So nice out here. Lots of castings starting to pile up, but still, I don't know. Even though the moisture feels pretty adequate and comfortable, I'm going to stick with covering with the plastic for a little while longer. Maybe at the next go around we'll cover up with paper only. So let's get this fancy top covering here in place, but you know what? Sometimes I worry about releasing worms into a coating of this dry material. Kind of might end up preventing them from wanting to dive down into it. So maybe we'll do a final sprinkle on top after we've released the wormies. But we've got a pretty good amount of stuff to empty here, and it's mostly here within this container. This was more of a drop cloth sort of. Got a couple babies hanging out in here, one juvenile, one newborn, and even a very, very tiny baby newborn. And hopefully that's what we're going to kind of see a trend of in this material as we release it. And I know for that reason it is very difficult to judge what we're looking at here, because there's just so many of them that are so itsy bitsy that the best you could do is just come up with some sort of a gut estimate, right? So please, I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback on this topic. How many worms are we releasing here today? How many did we gather from this 49-day-old nursery? Man, was it really a nursery, or was it the collection of stragglers mixed in to the bedding? Oh, and we're also bringing back the pumpkin stem from the pocket feeding system. All right, let's let these guys settle in, and we'll be ready to cover up with leaves. All right, maybe this stem will benefit from being submerged a little bit. Oops, I busted off the top of it. I always try not to disturb the overall structure of the object, so we can really watch the wonder of the worms breaking something like that down over time, rather than cheating nature. So let's see, we've got, I thought we had a coffee filter, here it is, as well as the top covering newspaper. So let's just drop in a little bit more leafy matter on top, just to give the whole system a nice consistent top covering appearance of natural materials. And then on can go the top coverings, the feeding zone indicator, as well as the top covering newspaper bit, which is getting pretty heavily worn, I must say. So back will come the bubble wrap for one more round, and maybe next time we'll remove it. The system does look like it could potentially do well on its own without plastic to help prevent moisture loss through evaporation, but I'm going to try to play it safe. We're going to keep this here, and we're also going to keep it away from bin number 1. I'd rather just have nothing near bin number 1 for a while. Keep it quarantined just to see what becomes of that, and I'm also very curious to hear what anybody that has had that before and knows what it is. Let me know what it is, and whether what I did was the right thing, or if there's anything else I should be thinking of, or what to expect. Would be great information from anyone who knows. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.